some of the rooks and all that, we do have some other drama with Scrap talking about joining OpTic. Woo! And before we get into all the drama, guys, like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you guys like the video. We want to get this, keep it pushing, keep it popping. All right? But let's watch this video. I'm turning the volume master. Finally, we do have Scrap himself addressing some of the talks and combos happening, the narrative happening around him joining OpTic. We've mentioned it on this show before. So let's see what he had to say personally.
A fucking major, bro. Why you guys always love asking me about OpTic, bro? You guys love asking me about that shit, man. Leave me alone, bro. Leave me the fuck alone. Leave me alone. I like my team, bro. My team's godlike. I want a fucking major, bro. I'm thinking about this year only. What's next major? Who gives a fuck, man? God damn. Who cares? I love asking me about that shit.
Interesting reaction out of him. A little bit pushback to the chat. Rab, since we started with Trey earlier, Rab, how do you feel about his reaction to the chat asking him?
I respect any premium Counter-Strike enjoyer. So typical Scrappy playing a real man's game. Pretty decent rank as well.
That. Yeah, respect that.
But yeah, I can understand why he's annoyed. I mean, I think it would have probably got to Pred last year when. But the thing is, it was different with Pred because everyone knew he was joining OpTic pretty much. Like it was kind of a known thing. The contract was basically written because it was already going to happen earlier in the year. So when people were chanting OpTic Pred and people coming in Pred's chat saying OpTic Pred, like I'm sure that it was a bit annoying because he was still on Surge, but Surge realistically were not going to be a championship contender last year. So he was just biding his time until he got the OpTic thing done. A bit different for Scrappy, right? Because there's still Toronto have won an event this year. They're going to try and do so again the next couple of events. And Scrappy is hearing all this OpTic stuff that isn't really caused anything by himself. It's just because OpTic are looking at FaZe and they're thinking, well, damn, if we don't, beat them with this roster, what the hell are we going to try next year? And you know how OpTic do, they try and form every single super team under the sun. Obviously, Scrappy's going to be in those conversations. So, he says, oh, I still like my team. Yeah, I still focus on winning. And I think that's true. But you can't deny that Scrappy hasn't thought about it. And it's not like he doesn't help himself exactly because he's just playing with his friends. But, he does play a lot with Dashy and, Pred and those guys. So he is kind of asking for it in terms of the conversations to be had. But I understand it from a competitor's perspective.
Trey?
I mean, it's a classic PR response, isn't it? He's not going to be like, yeah, well, I'd love to join OpTic after this year with 2 more majors left in champs. So, he's not going to walk out and be like, yeah, well, I've been playing with them a lot. I love playing with those guys, like my brothers. Wouldn't mind teaming with them next year, but, I've got to focus on this year. No, I said, it's a very, obviously, I'd get annoyed of it too, but he has just got to focus on this year, especially where his team's at right now. They're obviously not the greatest in the game again. So he's definitely right about when people, come in there. Because I've been in his stream, and it is, when you join an OpTic Scrap, OpTic this, OpTic that. And, he probably is just getting pissed off at it now because he's Scrappy. He's a Toronto Scrappy. He's Toronto Scrappy to the end of the year, and that's not going to change. And it could potentially not change next year either. So we'll see where it happens.
I'm a fan of his response. Obviously, it's recalculated. It's like kind of the narrative is brought back up because that Zoom attorney where he was playing with Pred and Shotzi on the same team. So I'm sure a lot of people were getting a little excited to see that combo happening. I like his response though. It's very professional. There's quite a few people that maybe could learn a few things from how he's handling it, how he's handling certain professional conversations. I think there's some responses. Sometimes you need to be PR, sometimes you don't. And I'm glad Scrap is not just he's not permanently just firing off. He's calculated in his words. He knows when's the right time to pop off and when's not the right time to pop off. So I'm a fan of this response. It's good for his teammates, good for the Toronto org, good leadership out of him. He's a young guy, but it's a good leadership quality out of him to show that. So I'm happy. I'm happy he came about it this way.
He's a smart guy, right? Because he doesn't trust your OpTic.
That's what I'm saying, but that's what I'm saying, all right? Now, if he was actually being Scrappy, he would say, I'm not joining those shitters. If someone said about FaZe Scrap, he would say, oh, no, I wouldn't join those shitters. But because it's OpTic, he knows. He's a smart man. He's a smart man. He's don't piss off the Greenwall. Now, me, I don't care. If I think they're shit, if I think they're going to lose, they're going to lose. But he, very smart man. OpTic Scrappy would never talk shit about OpTic. and that's
It's
why
not
he's
even
with
about the
team.
Greenwall so much. It's about Hex. That's how it works. Like if you piss off Hex and Hex don't like you anymore for whatever reason, and it's it's not quite like that, but it's like that to some extent. That you don't want to get on Hex's bad side as a player that might potentially want to join OpTic at some point. So
Oh,
got to
yeah,
make
I
sure
mean,
you keep the door open as a player. So why not?
that's why I never got the opportunity. Me and Hex had some beef back in the day. That's a
Exactly.
big
Otherwise,
lie.
you'd have still been there.
That's a big lie. He did let me go into the Hex quarters to play when I was on phase, and I bought him a bottle of whiskey. Don't know if he drank it or not, but
OpTic Zero sounds real nice. I'm just gonna say OpTic Zero does sound really hard.
It's not a
Okay,
whiskey we were talking, Trey.
just to add a little spice to this.
some cheap stuff.
You bought the cheap stuff. What's wrong with you? First
Bro,
off, what's wrong with you?
I wasn't making no bread.
Man said he was on phase and not making no bread. Make it make sense. Listen, chat, I want you guys to put the number in the chat as well. But if we had to put a percentage chance that we see Scrap on OpTic in the next, let's say, 2 years, so maybe not next year, but the year after, what percentage are we putting on that happening? Chat, what do you guys think? And let's go. Trey, you first. What percent you want to put on that?
I'm not right. I don't see it happening personally.
Interesting. 0%?
Just for the pure fact of like, just with everything going around, with the way the teams are right now, we're looking at OpTic and FaZe grand finals every event. One of these times, OpTic's got to beat FaZe. I think if they beat, I've already said whoever comes first and second at champs, I don't feel like their team changes.
Interesting. Okay, so the reasoning is literally just how the year is playing out, basically.
Yeah, I think we've watched OpTic play FaZe enough, and we can all agree that FaZe is the best team in the game, and OpTic is second best team in the game. All they need to do is beat FaZe once to actually unlock that. Oh shit, we can actually beat these gremlins, and once that happens, I just don't see the team changing because that's obviously unlocked their actual potential as a team.
Okay, Rab, what percent would you put on the next 2 years?
I think I'm giving it like 60%, something like that. Because the way that I look at it is it's like, if OpTic are going to make a change, it's probably not going to be a one-man move in the SMG department. Shotzi ain't going anywhere. I don't think they would just trade Pred for Hydra as a one-man change. It's possible. But it's like, if OpTic are going to make a move, it's probably going to be one of the ARs. And the only sensible option that makes sense for OpTic to try and upgrade is Scrappy. So like, if OpTic are going to make a move, Scrappy's probably going to be there. The debate obviously is, which player they would remove. I know we discussed previously how a hypothetical scenario where Dashy and Scrap trade teams is, I don't think, impossible. Just because I do firmly believe that if OpTic drop Kenny, it will prove to be a mistake. The thing is, you don't want to drop Dashy either, but it's like, it's 4v4, not 5v5. It's still all hypothetical because we're not that far into the season in terms of we've got 3 more events to go. We're basically halfway through. And if they were to, beat FaZe, because I think FaZe will have some sort of slump at some point. FaZe's slump is like second, but I think that they will probably not play completely indomitable COD from now to the end of the year. So I feel like OpTic will be able to get one over on them at some point. But it's interesting. I think in the next 2 years, I might even say it's higher than 60% in some way. But I think we'll stick with that.
I would say I'd say 0% for the next year, but I do agree with you. If you drop Kenny for him, I think if you put Scrap on that team that is just so kill orientated, that it will actually make them worse.
I'm gonna go with 90%. Take a real big shot here. I think if OpTic don't win, the only way it changes is if Dashy is on a team with OpTic the next 2 years that wins an event. If they don't actually win an event in the next year, including the next game, they don't dominate for some span of time, I think the Dashy experiment they need to move on from that, personally. So I think Ken will stay, Scrap will replace Dashy, and then that would become the OpTic super team, which in essence really is a team formed just to beat FaZe, which is kind of insane to think about. But I'm putting
But every
the
team
chances at 90%.
did this after Cold War, and it basically worked, huh?
It did. It did work.
Like in Vanguard, everyone beat FaZe in the finals.
That's true, but I mean there's more factors to that. That's a whole different. That's a whole deep discussion of like game factors, how the game played out, maps, and all that stuff. But I don't know. In my opinion, that's the only logical conclusion with this year. 90% of OpTic cannot beat FaZe by the end of this game. I think it goes up to 90% at that point. So pretty high chance. But we do.
The other question before we talk about the second Scrappy drama, just because I thought I'd address it now. I know there was some debate from Octane and the guys on the flank yesterday. You could even maybe, I've got a screenshot here that PD Gaming put, Ace, that you might want to just put up on the screen. Gotcha. But this is a discussion around the potential SMG side, right? Because people are going to talk, okay, well, if Scrap was to come in, who should go, Kenny or Dashy, whatever. From an SMG side, the thought is, well, if you're going to make a move, it's probably going to be Hydra coming in, right? Because Hydra's the most talented SMG player that's hypothetically available. I think he is going to be available probably at the end of this year. He was meant to be joining OpTic, and that was 95% according to Ronnie. CDO Scrim Intel locked in before it all fell through because they decided to run it back going into MW2. So theoretically, Hydra comes in. The question was, who do you pair him with, right? Like, do you keep Shotzi? Do you keep Pred in that scenario? I think my mindset is very clear that I'm not getting rid of Shotzi. And I don't think OpTic are frankly ever going to do that. From like how important he is from a personality side. So my question is really, do you get rid of Pred, or do you potentially even put Pred onto like a flex role? That is maybe not an impossibility. But the debate was whether Pred and Hydra, or certainly Shotzi and Hydra, actually work. Because Octane's opinion was Hydra and Shotzi don't work as a duo. And I don't agree with that. And people were roasting Octane because he apparently thought that Simp was a kill whore back in the day, and therefore he didn't pick him up. So, you know, the opinion might be that Octane has no ball knowledge when it comes to SMGs.
I'll take this first off. Trey, you have your thoughts, I know. I'm going to say that I do not see a world where Pred gets dropped. I think Hex generally, with most players, we can see through it. There's times he's investing in a player, and there's times they just need the best available, right? You can talk about the Hook last year, MW2, a lot of situations happening, Scump retiring, Ildi has to go out, a lot of volatility occurring. You could tell that wasn't so much an investment into a player, but it was the best available, reliable guy. Let's get him in there. Let's make it work. Pred, it was an investment for long term, and Pred is an incredible player all around. So I do not see a world where after 1 year, and Shotzi being the biggest player in the league, just across the board, brand-wise, oh, let's just get rid of Pred, or let's get rid of the biggest player in the league for Hydra, which essentially is almost an equivalent player to Pred, just depending on the game, depending on the time, depending on their peaks and valleys, right? If we're only thinking about MW2, sure, Hydra's the best player in that game, but Pred was right behind him in this game. There's been ups and downs for both teams, records, and Pred clearly with his team is more effective in the league all around than Hydra is with his team in this game. So I don't see a world where Pred or I don't see a world where the SMGs get dropped. The only world I see is OpTic deciding an AR decision of, do we continue the Dashy, OpTic Dashy time span and experiment with our team, or do we run with Kenny? We love what he's doing. We love the leadership he brings, and we're going to lock him in for, you know, future time. Because as of right now, I think that's the big question. Is Kenny a player they're heavily invested in, or is this another Hook situation where it's, we need someone to fill the role, this is the best guy out, let's get him in for a year, and then we're going to drop him for someone else, like Scrap. That's kind of my big if, ands, and buts about what could happen with OpTic going ahead.
I think the only person safe on OpTic is Shotzi.
Only
That's
person
the way
safe?
I see it.
Wow.
I think that's the only person safe. And I'm not saying like, you know, one bad event they're gone. I'm just saying out of any of those players, like Shotzi's probably the safest one there. Like you said, biggest brand, everything like that. I do agree that OpTic would invest into Pred. I'm not saying they're just going to pick him up for 1 year and be like, oh, we didn't win, we're going to get rid of him. I'm just saying the only undroppable person on OpTic to me is Shotzi.
Interesting take. Interesting take. I mean, I think this is one where we have to, you know, agree to disagree. And also the time, the next couple majors is going to determine how it all plays out. So we just got to kind of see what happens with OpTic, how they play, if they end up beating FaZe or they get slammed for the next two majors. That's going to determine kind of what happens after. But more